Welcome to the FBA Basecamp podcast.
What's going on, everybody? Today we have with us Tony, who goes by Startup FBA. He's a seven-figure seller that has a wild story of how he started. He's been doing Amazon selling and selling online for probably the better part of a decade now. And he got out of it for a little bit and then got back into it. And he's hit it really hard in the last about year and a half here. We're excited to kind of hear his story and just talk to him. He's one of the most analytical people that I know in a great way. He's helped me out with my storefront tremendously. And any of his content that he's put out that was similar to mine when I was creating it for my VAs, I just started sending the VAs his information. He's a great person. We're happy to have him on. We've been trying to get him on for about a month here. We're excited and think that you'll get a lot out of listening to him. Tony, thanks for joining us and welcome.
Thank you for having me, my man. I appreciate it. I was looking forward to this all week.
So kind of give us the background of, how you got started in this. You got started very early, and kind of talk about what you went through from the retail arbitrage into the online arbitrage, and kind of what you've been doing to make that easier for you, and kind of the trigger points that you had where it made it more efficient for you to do this on your own.
Oh, for sure, man. We're going way back. I started in 2014, man. And what's funny is the impetus came from like a little $3 ebook that I bought. It was talking about like scanning barcodes to like turn it into profit. I was like, okay. And then I had found like some blog of someone documenting their journey. And I was like, the more I read his blog, the more and more I bought into the belief, like, oh man, it's possible, And so I started trying it. And the aha moment for me was, I think we had a Kmart closing down and there were Slugterra darts that I scanned that made like $8 each. I think I found like 20 or 30 of them in one shot. And I was like, this represents like my day's wage. And I found it in like 10 minutes. And
wow.
I'm like, this is crazy. Like that was the aha moment, And so it took me, I think maybe like 5 months. Cause I was doing it kind of like as a hobby, like a proof of concept, so to speak. I was like, if I can make, I think at the time, God, I was 24 or something like that. Like my overhead expenses were say like 2,000. I was like, I'll consider quitting my job once I can cover my base expenses. And it took me to like 6 months to do that. And I think I was going into my first Q4 when that had happened. But it wasn't until like Toys R Us came into the story that I like really dialed in. And I think Jeff has that background too.
Oh yeah, we spent a lot of time at Toys R Us back in the day.
Yes. And the thing with me was like I found out about Toys R Us all by accident. Like all of my like methodology and philosophy came from Toys R Us because like the first big impetus was on Thursdays they had their credit card that gave you 10% off. But I found out on accident because I had to do what's called a partial or a split pay. As long as you put a penny on the credit card, they basically like pushed a button on the register and they manually put 10% off on the whole transaction. And so what that led up to doing is they also offer tax exempt. So you get I'm in California, so it's like 10% sales tax saving, 10% off on Thursday. So you're at 20%. And then at the time I was buying 10% off gift cards. So I pay for the rest of the balance in gift cards. So it's another 10%. Obviously, whatever the sale is, you're benefiting from that too. And then the credit card rewards, I think it was an equivalent of 6 or 8% cash back. And so I found out on accident that you could combine a gift card. And so what I was doing is, I think their max limit was 1,000. I would buy, say, like $200 ones, and I'd combine 5 of them into $1,000 one, like a mega one. And the purpose of that was to make the transaction process go a lot faster, because before I was paying like $50 gift cards each time, and it's like a pain in the butt. But I found out when combining gift cards, you could splash a dollar onto your credit card and it would award the whole balance, that 8% cash back.
Nice.
And so you could literally just add $1 each time from 900 to 1,000 and you would get, I don't know what that would be, like 20 grand of like gift card manufactured spend on your credit card.
Yep.
And so the credit card would give you $600 in payouts a month. And I think I was cycling 5 credit cards at the time. So it was like $3,000 free money. Oh man, a Halloween time we would just go and buy like $400 of candy. It was phenomenal. It was just like play money, so we loved it. And like that was the thing. Like you got all the discount that way. And like with toys specifically, Amazon kind of dominated the toys like niche in specific, and that's how I learned how to gravitate towards store exclusive stuff. Because like Amazon was the bane of my existence, but like if you sold something that Toys R Us sold, by definition, Amazon shouldn't sell it.
Yep.
And so that's where I realized like that was a competitive advantage because you needed to go to Toys R Us and then you needed all that manufactured margin behind you to make it viable. And I kind of got the stores trained up to like, say you buy 10 this week, next week the replenish will be like 12. And eventually they start getting like, up towards 50, 60, 80 items a month. And you just clear them out. And I would rotate like the district. It's so much fun. I would do receipts for surveys and like they would love me. I'd bring them donuts and stuff. I would get the heroes welcome. They would open registers for me and like tell the general public like, no, like this guy like has too much stuff. Like we got to take care of him.
Wow.
Yeah.
But like that was the whole toys background. I think that year I did a million. Like, no, I'm sorry. I'm looking at my numbers. Like my first year in 2014, I started in November. I did 20,000. That next year in 2015, I did 785,000.
Nice.
So
now, were you going in and scanning everything and just trying to figure out what was good and then just kept buying the same stuff over and over and over again?
Yeah. So I ended up, I call them route items. Because that was one of the things that I never really liked about RA stuff is that your income is, I always think of it as a question mark when you go out. And that's kind of like a dangerous way to live, that you don't know what your output's going to be when you go out. And so by having the route items, you at least guarantee yourself a baseline of like, I should expect to see these items in the field every time you go. So at least you can then like say, every time I go, I should make at least like $200, But the benefit of that is that's around the time when I learned about barcode scanners, like little handheld.
Yep.
And so I'd hold it under my phone and I just like, and so it's just rapid fire because like when you're going through stuff, maybe you scan 100 things and maybe like 10 are worth reviewing and like 3 are worth buying. The numbers might not be that skewed. It's more so to illustrate, like you want to go volume and you're going fast. And at the time we didn't have Seller Amp. I think we had Inventory Lab, Scoutify. Back then it was Camel. Keepa wasn't as established then. God, there was no like IP complaints back then. Gating wasn't too much of an issue.
Suppressed buy boxes were not that big of a deal. A little
deal.
Bit, but nothing like they were now.
Yeah. People used to specifically, I think the threshold for free shipping was like $25 back then for non-prime customers, and everyone would price things at $25 or whatever it was. Oh, it was so good. The heydays, man.
Yeah.
I didn't know how good we had
times. Did you go there? We used to go on Thanksgiving because you had the Black Friday sales.
Yeah.
And on Thursday, so you got that 10%. You stacked your gift cards, your rewards, and now you're getting the the $25 Nerf guns that sell for $75 on.
Oh my God, the Nerf Strife maybe.
Yeah, something like that. I forget. Yes. You would get on Thursday, so you get that extra 10%. I'd scarf down my turkey dinner, and then I would try to get out and get as much as you can before the clock hit midnight. Then it
was
Walmart,
nuts, man.
Other stores.
On some of the stores, because some of the stores are anti-reseller, so they wouldn't do the tax exempts, and I would have friendly stores, so I just buy it, pay sales tax, and re-ring it at another store and get the sales tax refunded.
Nice.
I was really nice with them because it would take like 20 minutes to do, and we would banter. So it was a lot of fun for me. And I found out you could do like bulk orders too. I think I did it 2 or 3 times. The store would submit it themselves, and then like they would get the quantity, and then they would release it to me. That was fun.
Wow.
Were you doing online Toys R Us too, or are you just doing in store?
I did. Because you could do sales tax reimbursement online. You have to do it after the fact. It was kind of sloppy, but I was doing it. I should have hit it a lot harder now that I think of it. I'm thinking of like the Happy Together brand. I missed that thing.
I got banned from them at some point, but I think that was as simple as creating another account, though. I don't think it was.
Yeah, they're kind of hostile.
I don't think it was too complicated. It was, you're banned. I just created a new account.
Oh yeah, dude, this is the Wild West with Toys R Us. The other thing too that they had was a registry. And what I figured out was for the route items, I would just load it in the registry, like say 10 items. And I would go at the start of every shopping journey, I would print out the registry. So it'd tell me if it was in stock. And I was using it as functionally as a stock check, and it would tell me where it was in the aisle. And I was doing this at Target for a time too, because then at least you can say like, oh, my route items, they have at least 8 of them here. Like, let me go grab them. And then obviously when you check out, you don't give them the registry because you don't want the registry to like take it off.
Yep.
And so it's like you kind of make yourself a shopping list, so to speak.
There's some stores that were doing like 10% off of registry items too.
Babies R Us did that.
Bye Bye Baby was one of them. If you like registered there, now you would have to do it like a couple weeks in advance because you couldn't just start a registry and then go buy stuff. It had to have the registry like established. It had a period, and then it would say, okay, now you can release it. So it was, they tried to make it so people couldn't just go in and buy a sale item with it. And I assume it's the same thing now with Target and all that. But I thought Target had some sort of wedding registry discount as well, but I don't remember specifically on that. But yeah, I mean, it's additional savings if you want to try to go that route on it.
I've never tried it for Target. I remember another thing for Toys R Us at one time, because they have it in Canada as well. And I had tried to service back in the day. I didn't know that Niagara Falls is on the border of the United States and Canada. They basically had 2 offices, like one on each side, like within 10 miles apart. And so I'd buy stuff from Canada. They'd go to their physical office and they would drive it over to the US, and then they would, ship it like a prep center, basically. But the benefit of that was there was Canada specific SKUs or like discontinued Legos that you could bring into the States. And I think the threshold at the time was like $600. You didn't have to claim it on customs or whatever. And so as long as you like cruise under that, like you're good.
Nice.
You're heavy
Had
into
some
it.
good Lego deals at Toys R Us. They had their own. What did they have? What was Bricktober or something?
Yeah, Bricktober. I still have some actually. Like
their Lego exclusives and everything.
It was gnarly.
It was some good times. I wasn't really huge in the Lego back then, but still, there's some good stuff there. So what happened? How did you adapt, or as Toys R Us shut down?
Oh man, I'm looking at my numbers because I have my I did a little Excel sheet with 1099K with all my numbers for all my years, and it must have happened in 2018 or 2019 because I went from like 600K revenue down to 300K, and full disclosure, I kind of floundered basically, and I was self-inflicted. Like I failed to pivot because I effectively put all my eggs in one basket because I was like, man, this is a golden goose. Like, why am I gonna like learn something else when I have this on autopilot functionally? And so I was trying to go to like Target and stuff, and it just never felt the same. Like I felt like I had an eye on me.
No, it was hard. It was hard to replace Toys R Us.
We had the whole system, like the Target Red Card. Like you couldn't do the partial pay because like if you put $5 on the card, like only $5 got $5 discount. It wasn't like applied towards the whole transaction. I tried. You couldn't combine gift cards and stuff. But it was around that time like my income suffered as a result because I was doing Amazon full time at that point. And I think I did it just like for a year or two, and then my friend at the time manages Guns N' Roses, and he told me like my personal assistant quit. Like, do you want the job? And I had met Fernando, like 2001. Like I bring it up because my qualifications were I met him in 2001, and I've been his friend for like 15 years. And I was like, well, I don't have anything too much going on. So I was like, yeah. So I ended up being the personal assistant to the manager for Guns N' Roses for I think 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
And that was pretty gnarly because they're local, and I got to see behind the scenes. There's a lot of money, like running around in those circles. Yeah. And so it's really weird being near that much wealth and being like, man, these guys are just like, at the end of the day, like obviously they're just humans like us, Yeah. I remember one time I was getting food for Axel, and like they're doing his order. I was like, man, this guy eats just like me. And it's just stupid thought.
Yeah, that's cool.
But with all that entails, like, at the end of the day, like it just ends up being work. Like the novelty kind of wears off. And I was like, like there's no room for me to go up. Well, not so to speak. I shouldn't say that. Like I didn't want to go deeper into like that world. And so I was like, it always messed with me in my head because I came from Amazon as a background. So like, when you know how to make money for yourself and you go into a position where you're being told what to do, like it always, like whenever you're unhappy, you're thinking like, oh, I know how to make money for myself. Like, what am I doing here? Yeah. And so like, I kind of got to that point, I think in 2021, it looks like at my numbers. And so I joined another coaching group, and like, that's where I learned how to pivot to shoes and sourcing like Kohl's, Nike, Shop WSS and stuff. And and funny enough, like it wasn't until from 2014 when I started until 2022 that I started like literally networking. Like I was literally in the dark for like 9 years, and it was all self-inflicted. And like I only have myself to blame because I always thought like, oh, they're gonna take my stuff,
Yeah.
And like one of the things I've realized is that like when you really sit down to think about it, there isn't that much competition in Amazon, in the sense that like when you look at your listing, you have to think of it in the sense of like they have to have your risk appetite, they have to have access to the product, they have to be set up on Amazon, they have to like be there at the right time, all these things that happen, and like they're either going to have a shallow purchase depth or not be on the listing at all, and then you have to multiply that out across your entire catalog. And so like the thing I always remind myself is that like 2 sellers can look at the same ASIN and walk away with 2 totally different conclusions. Yeah. And that's wild to me. And so like when you think about it, when you're looking at all your listings, like you might only see like 2 or 3 sellers that like you like store names who you recognize across all your listings. And I think from a competitive standpoint, like that's nothing, man. Like Amazon's great in that respect.
Yeah. And the amount of eyeballs that get on every listing is just massive. I mean, I remember I was on like a Nike product listing, and I went and pulled up like the analytics of how many eyes got on it. It was like millions, and I'm like, this thing's been listed for a week. I'm like, how does millions see my store? And I had a lot of sales, so that's why I looked at it. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, that's incredible that it has that much, viewership. And I think that one might have been one that I had created the listing. So it was like the listing was a week old or something like that, and it had like millions of views. And I'm like that, and that was without any pay-per-click. So it was like the amount of advertising that you get for free just because it's a name brand and people are going to search is just massive. It's incredible.
Nuts. That's how I was gauging velocity way back in the day before we had like Keepa. I think I was using Camel, and they would track the sales ranks, like the dips. Because my understanding is that it updates every hour and like it goes up and down. And back then we would count the dips. Like, okay, it dips 20 times in the month. It sold 20 times. Like, let's buy 20. Like that was the process back in the day. And funny enough, like like my modern day sourcing is with web scraping, and I was doing web scraping on Toys R Us, but back then like I had hired an admin to write it in PowerShell. And I was more so like involved in the side of like, I'll pay for it. And I had someone else setting it up. But like fast forward to today, like I know how to do that myself. And that came because that was a big pain point. Like in 2022, when I joined that coaching program, I shifted entirely to OA. And the upside is like you can work from anywhere. And like I think COVID was in full force around then. And so I was like, well, I was terrified of it. So like I didn't want to go outside anyway. I was like, well, I'm gonna have to make this work. And if I was being honest, like I didn't believe like it was possible until like I figured out like the tips and tricks of the trade. But like it's interesting in that like you have to learn it from a theory standpoint, and then you have to like master it and optimize it, and then like it gets better. And for me, my big like breakthrough was like threefold. And I was mentioning to you earlier about networking. I think I was playing a mobile game at the time, just like goofing off. And someone in there told me like they're doing SBA loans for the COVID EIDL loan. And I literally applied for it on the last day of the program.
Oh.
I think they still had $10 billion available. And I, based on my income from the past 2 years on Amazon, they qualified me for $267,000 for 30 years at 3.5% with the payment deferment, meaning I don't have to make my first payment for 25 months out. And
is that a loan or a line of credit?
It's a loan.
Okay.
So they just gave me all this money. And what was funny is that I think the paperwork either to apply or to accept it was like a page and a half. And it was like dead simple. Like going to the DMV is harder than this.
Yeah, just giving away money.
And I was like, I would be dumb not to take this money at 3.5%.
Oh yeah.
And so I ended up taking it, and that was kind of what propelled me, because I always had hesitation of like, I mean, because with consumer debt, it's dumb to like put it on credit because you're gonna pay interest and like it's not generating you money. But with business, like I shouldn't have been so hesitant, because if you're leveraging credit to produce more income, like it's okay. Because that's the difference. You're making money on, even though it's costing you money, but you're coming ahead on the difference. And so with having that much money available so cheap, it solved what I ended up calling like the three pillars. Like pillar one was the financing. So once I had the financing, like I didn't have that as an excuse anymore. Like I needed to buy stuff. And so it ended up, problem two was I need lead flow. And like that's where I hired a programmer to like learn how to web scrape websites. And basically all that entails is certain websites will list the UPCs on them. And so you just grab the UPCs basically from like the entire website along with a price, and then you run it through Amazon with software, and it'll spit out like, okay, here's your ASIN, your sales rank, your profit. And now you're just like vetting data, because you're no longer looking for data. You want to be vetting data. And so like that was my great leap forward in terms of like processing data. And so then a third choke point was labor. And I got a prep center on the recommendation from that coaching group. And like, because I like to think of things as an extreme ends. Like if you're buying all the time, that means you're not prepping. And if you're prepping all the time, you're not buying. And so that's kind of why I never liked eBay as a business model, just as a preference, because like I didn't want to be shipping stuff like on demand. And so that's where like, especially during Q4 when you get the crunch, like that's where the leverage came to play, because now I had like all the money in place, all the lead flow, and like I just send it all to the prep center. And I like to tell people like the prep center is kind of like a proxy for a pre-trained employee without having to get one on your payroll specifically, like, provided like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and stuff, and they're like competent and whatnot. That's an awesome shortcut. Like you get all the benefit of the upside without having to do any of the training. You just give them the money and like off to the races.
Well, and the tax savings alone, if you're buying from stores that you're going to pay tax, are going to pay, especially for you out in, what is it, 9.5% over there in California? Like that tax savings itself that was sort of an aha moment for me when I was doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, as you said, you have that whole prep, especially if I was working a full-time job, like, I can't do this, all the prep. And I'm like, oh, wait, prep center. And at first it was, I don't want to pay for somebody. And I was like, oh shit, I'm not paying them. I'm saving money.
Yeah.
You're buying something over $20, and it's at this point it's a savings for you. So.
And that's where I was kicking myself because Tony had mentioned that he had started the coaching in 2022, and I had looked back at like when he had started because I'm in the same coaching that he's in, and I had done a call, like a one-on-one call with Miles, because at the time I was like, this seems not real, so let me just make sure this is like an actual legitimate thing. And my wife and I both got on the call with him because we're like, this is a decision we're going to go like head first into. Let's make sure that we're gonna drop like $50,000-$100,000 on it. Let's make sure that this is actually like real and able to be done, and not just somebody who's like, yeah, I can make a bunch of money off of coaching. And again, that wasn't the situation with that there. But I didn't know that he had just started, because you got in as like one of the first people in that coaching group. And I had done the one-on-one call, I think the month that he started the coaching. And so he didn't say anything to me on the call about the coaching, and I didn't find out about it till later. And I had made all sorts of stupid purchases. And I'm a huge advocate of like talking to people to move forward quicker. So you don't like, I didn't have the time to go through and make all the bad decisions. I wanted to, go through it and learn. So I had done calls with, Miles. I did calls with Michaela. We went through all these. Yeah. I mean, and every time it was absolutely worth it. But it's one of those things where when I finally, a year later or whatever it was, got into coaching, and then I think 2 weeks into that, you hopped on a call and did Keepa. Now you didn't know it, but I had just made a Keepa video for our VAs, and I sent it out to somebody who like just wasn't using Keepa at all. And I'm like, I'm pretty good with it. I'm like, I'll share with you this thing. And then I watched your video, and I'm like, I am not good at this. Like, it was great. I was like, I didn't even know that it could do some of the stuff. And then you got into the one video where you started doing all the pivot tables and all the different things that you do to source data. And I'm like, this is amazing what could be done. And you're like, well, that's actually stuff I did like a year ago. Like, I'm like, what the heck are you doing now? And then while further into the story, I had talked to somebody because I'm like, hey, I haven't heard from Tony in a while. What happened? He goes, oh, he's learning coding right now. He decided he wanted to remove the middleman because it was taking too long to get results out of creating different softwares and things for him. So he's just going to learn it himself. And I'm like, that's just incredible, but exactly what I would expect of you to do.
Well, it's nuts, just to give you like perspective, because that's the thing, like manual sourcing, it's a skill like anything else, but when you're starting out, it's really painful and it's really dull and slow. I think it scales poorly because like you just need man hours on top of the skill. With the scraping, at least with Kohl's for the Nike catalog, I'll get like 85,000 UPCs. And so like, It's not enough to just know the skill to scrape. Like you still need to be set up to manufacture the margin and have the prep center and have all that benefit. And then on top of that, you still need to be able to have the financing to buy everything. And you need to know you need to have the skill set on how to qualify the leads, like without blowing yourself up. And that's why I started, like they kept saying it like manufacture margin stuff, and you're like, you don't really understand it until like it clicks. And for me, it clicked when like Converse is like the big one for Kohl's, because like if you use the Kohl's cash on Converse at Kohl's, it's functionally standing in as the discount or the sale, and so it's creating the sale on demand. And what it's doing by extension is that it's creating a replenishable item, and that extra margin is what's keeping you like on autopilot, which is awesome. Because that's one of the bad things with sales, or not necessarily a bad thing, but that's one of the weak points. When you're buying stuff on sale, you won't have access to that price point again if you try to replenish it, because you don't know when it's going to go on sale, if it's going to go on sale, if it's going to go on sale at the same price, or how long, And that sucks because you only get one shot to like get it right, and you don't have the benefit of the test purchase unless you do like an RA purchase, merchant fulfill it in day like 1 of 3 of a 7-day cycle, and then re-up on day 7. Not to say that there isn't merit to it, but like I kind of like to think of it as like you're building on like not a solid foundation. Because that means you have to reinvent yourself every week. You're always chasing cycles and stuff. And that's why I think that's like the holy grail for wholesale, is that everything's replenishable. Like if you can get it to that point, and then like you can just like, it's autopilot, and you're just doing volume at that point. And so what scraping did was to bring back the example earlier, that I get 80,000 UPCs, and then I might end up having like 700, probably like 2,000 matches. And this is just UPC to ASIN match. And then you have to do the filters and stuff, and then you're going down to probably like 100. And of those 100, I might only buy like 7. And so just to give perspective in terms of like someone trying to do this manually on their own, not knowing what they're doing, like, dude, I went through 80,000 of these and I only found 7 that I like. Like, what are the chances of like a normal person like stumbling on this? Like, it's
and really in that time frame before somebody else has bought it all.
Yeah. And so like, even the web scraping has limitations because like I'm dependent on the product catalog being created accurately. Because what people would do in the past is they would buy, like if they're gated, they would like register it under a different brand and like you have mismatched photos. You could use like an Adidas UPC, which are ungated on a Nike one. And so like I'm never going to match on those because like the UPC is not built correctly. But that's the trade-off I'm making. I'm going through 80,000 UPCs and I know I'm going to miss this stuff. But when you use Keepa, like you can look at stuff with no UPCs and you can see in between the line and stuff. Like I don't match on bundles because bundles don't have UPCs normally. So I'm never going to see them. But again, like I think my Scan Unlimited has a lifetime total. I think I've gone through 15 million UPCs. Like personally, like I don't care if I miss some stuff. Like I'm going through so much stuff. Like whenever I'm picking my battles whenever I'm going out, you know, I'm trying to stack the deck as much as I can in my favor. And one of the benefits of doing the scraping is if you can be first to market, like meaning like the first one to have the data and act on it, like you're in a position to stock stuff out and you can close the door behind you and no one can enter the listing. And that's really, really powerful. And I've done that before because like Kohl's will list the inventory levels on their website. And that's huge. Like who doesn't want that? And you could stop your competition, you know? And so like the web scraping just like supercharged everything. I need to like my next area of growth as a business is like getting VAs to vet the data because I don't have a problem getting the data anymore. It's about vetting the data. And funny enough, even getting it to that point, like you would think, oh, it's like Tony, you're set up for success. It's like, I don't like doing it, man. Like, even though I can, I just don't like doing it. I don't enjoy it. It's funny. Like I have a weird problem.
No, it's difficult to do because then you got to sit down and go through it all, and it's tedious. But you and I had talked previously about addressing the bundles, and you basically said like if it's part of a variation on that thing, you're going to look through the variations anyway if you find a good product that comes up. So you're going to find that. But what you were saying with the UPCs is just you're in for this as a long-term thing. You're not into it to make a quick buck and to do that. So you're protecting your account by making sure that you're matching the UPCs because it's something that nobody at any point can say that, no, this isn't the right thing because you've matched it both on picture and the ASIN as well as the UPC. And then you're checking the brand name and everything else. And you're protecting yourself there. And then you dive in deeper and do the last 30-day, 90-day, 180-day range of what Keep is showing as the sales. And you're saying, if this hits the lowest of the low, am I still going to be able to make money? And if the answer is yes, then that's another check. And you have these 5, 6, 10 checks, whatever it is that you go through, and then you purchase a product where you can do that if you're getting that much product coming in and saying, okay, I have 2,000 things I can look through that match. But now if you're going through, and we were just talking about this morning in our Discord group, or someone had asked if reverse sourcing was the best way for a beginner to find stuff. And both Jeff and I said, no, it's not. It's easy. It can help you figure out some products that might be good to look for on the next cycle of sales and everything. But you're trying to match somebody's sale on something that they or the what their margins were on something that you have no idea what they bought it for, and it was probably a month or more ago. So it's not something that you're going to necessarily be able to match and to you might think you're getting a good deal on it, and then all of a sudden they can drop the price and still make money, and you can't. So now it's into an issue where if you're a beginner seller, you're not going to be able to know to look for that stuff or how to look for that stuff and keep and kind of notice those trends. Where then comes that manual sourcing becomes the way to go. But again, your way of doing it, manual sources as well a little bit, but it's also pulling this data to say, okay, instead of looking at, I think on like the spring sale of Nike, there was 90,000 products or something that were on sale. And so then you throw them to your list and you get 2,000. Well, now you're only looking at 2,000 rather than 90,000. And especially if you're doing it part-time, it makes it something that you can actually do. Which is just a massive benefit. But if you don't know how to pull the data or get a solid leads list, like we can talk about how you're doing the premium leads lists and Noel's group there. If you don't have that information to go off of, there's just no way to get through that much data that quickly.
Yeah, for me, it's like all of Amazon is just like a big game of trade-offs. Because like you were mentioning, like reverse sourcing, I think storefront stocking excels in exposing you to brands that sell well that you otherwise might not have considered, but you'll never be able to replicate the win and at what price when they bought it. Because like if you're
Yeah.
competing against someone that bought a discontinued Lego, like you're never going to have access to it, if
you're
at
not
all.
gonna help.
And like people can have like sweetheart deals with like a manager, or like are manufacturing crazy margin, or have like 10% racks and cash back behind them. Like you're showing up after the fact, and like it's not beneficial in that sense. Like the main benefit is just like Nature's Bounty is a good brand to sell. Like, okay, cool. Going forward, I should look for it, because that's kind of one of the things that I started doing too. Is that because like you spend all the effort, right, matching the item and finding it, like the source and the ASIN, which is great. But what ends up happening is like if it doesn't work at the time and you just skip it and like leave it behind and never revisit it again, like you functionally wasted all that effort and time you spent finding it. And so kind of like your three options are to I do three things. You can do that. I think it's four. You can add it to a prep sheet and manually periodically check it. Two, you can keep a price alert, and it'll just email you, and like you go back to check it. I like doing a page monitor. It can be resource intensive on your computer, but basically what it's doing is, like, say it's $10. You just tell it to look at $10, and if that value changes either to 12 or 8 or whatever, it'll tell you like, hey, like the price change, and you're hoping that the sale will be enough to give you the increase in margin that you need. And so that way it's kind of, you're always looking at stuff without actively looking at stuff. You're passively looking at stuff. And so the idea is after you build that out, something's going to hit.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing with like Amazon flips. I imagine you have all these price alerts, but something's going to be hitting every day, and you don't need to be, it'd be great to buy all of them, of course, but like the bigger your net is, so to speak, like the more you're going to catch. And I think a lot of people will just like waste their effort, and like it's unfortunate because you don't need to live that way.
Yeah. No, and that's when I first started. That was, when I first started, Sears was one of the stores I hit, and I would go and I would, go. And once you start doing it, you find the Sears sellers. Like, there's 5 of them, and then their whole store is Sears. So you go into their store, and that's where I reverse source. I go in their store and I identify the products that are selling fast for them. Yeah. And then I use that page monitor. I forget what it used to be called, but there used to be a couple of them. Mm-hmm. And then, as you said, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd have 7 alerts for items that, dropped into the price range that I was looking for on Sears. Boom, place my orders. And, when I got started, I was a little bit after you in 2015, but Sears was, one, you had I signed up for a Discovery card that gave you unlimited cash back, or not unlimited, double cash back. Yeah. Then you would buy stuff through their cashback portal. Sears was 10%, but they give you 10% for buying it on buying the gift card. Yeah. And then 10% when you use the gift card. So every purchase you were getting 20% cash back plus.
Even on the gift card purchase?
Yes. Yes. You would get the 10% on the gift card, 10% for using the gift card. And then Discover was doubling that. So every purchase you were getting 40% cash back.
That's nuts.
You can't lose. And then Sears gave you like 10 to 15% back in points anyway. Yeah. So like you were getting like 50% back. I'm like, you can't lose. Like, I mean, again, the manufacturer margin, my ROI, on the books might have been 10, 20%, but that's okay because I got 40% cash back, on the back end, plus all the points to, buy the, stock up on stuff. So, that's the exact way that I use reverse sourcing is, you can't, just doing it off of like, hey, this is how I'm going to reverse source this guy and hope to find stuff is not, I don't think that's very effective, but hey, here's a store. I see this guy is hammering that store. Okay, let me understand what he's doing. But again, still, you got to wait for the deal. So set alerts or whatever. And I can't remember what the tool, but there was one I really liked, and it would just, it worked perfectly. I don't know if it monitored all sites, but it monitored certain sites, and it would email me as soon as.
Oh, it's perfect. I think Google will do it too for price alerts. I use one called Distill. Visual Ping is another one.
Yeah, Visual Ping's one I try. I didn't like it as much as the one that I used to like back in the day, but. And I think the big thing that they were doing was they wanted you to alert, and they wanted you to use their affiliate link to make the purchase. But of course, most of us doing this, we're not using their affiliate link. We're going through the cashback portal. So they're putting all these resources and efforts in, but not getting the affiliate link because most of the people that are actually bothering to set up these alerts are all resellers that are well aware of cashback portal.
Yeah. But that was like the big thing too for me was when I was reverse sourcing, so to speak. Like I always like to think of it as like I don't want to trailblaze. Like if someone's already done the effort for me and they know the product's selling, and you're making that assessment, like they wouldn't be stocking it unless it's selling. Like I like that. Like capitalize on their effort, And Kibo was really good. I think I showed Joe that you can just load up the brand like Equate. I think it's a Walmart exclusive.
Equate, Good
Yep.
Value. I mean, even Vitacost brand. I mean, there's all these ones, and I tell the people in our Discord is like, if you get stuck, go and do that, and then focus on one site. Don't look at Kohl's and WSS and all these different things and get overwhelmed. Pick one thing that you know that you can purchase from that has a lot of sales. Like Kohl's is a great one for that.
Yeah.
But really, if you look at anything, all the sales cycles are cyclical with the thing. So it's something where they're going to have it to compete with everybody else every month or whatever it is. So they're going to have something going on. You follow the sales with it. But if you go and look up the storefronts that have those name brand, their own private label or white label, whatever it is, products, Amazon's not selling them. Other people, you can't buy them anywhere else. So that they're shopping at Walmart, or that they're shopping at Kohl's has them, Target's got them. That they're shopping at those stores, and then you reverse source their site and try to find more products that are able to be purchased at those stores and are likely purchased at those stores. And then at least you've now narrowed it down to say, okay, I kind of know that they have 20% sales every once in a while, and they likely bought it from them. And now you can kind of get an idea of what they possibly purchased it from. And then you, like you said, manufacture your margin some by getting the gift cards or looking at Cashback when it jumps up, high. And then just try to make sure that you can, weather the storm if somebody does try to tank it, and that that you can drop the price down to that, or wait it out.
That was funny. I started incorporating Lego purchases into my buying strategy. I'm still new to it, but like functionally, what you're trying to do is like buy it at the end of its life cycle. Wait for it, because what happens is like a standard life cycle should be 24 months. It's not always, but the idea is you buy it like at month 23, and then you're holding it as it's discontinued, supplies exiting the market, and you might sell it at month say 30 or 36. And doing this, you'll end up clearing like anywhere from like 40 to 100% ROI. But like, that waiting period, like month 0 to 6, like nothing's happening, like no revenue is coming in, and it sucks. Like your year one sucks. Not to mention you have the physical logistical problem of like storing it all. But from a compounding perspective and an effort perspective, like it's crazy, man. And I found out Target this last cycle during Black Friday, because that was the other point I wanted to make, was that there are certain items that only are viable during a certain window of execution. And so for Lego, for example, during Black Friday, what you're doing is you're double dipping. Like you're buying a Lego, say a Target exclusive during Black Friday when it's discounted at the end of its life cycle. And now you're set up for Q4 is coming up, right? And so what Q4 does is it drains like the listing of all its supply. And so now you only have to hold for, if you do it, like, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get in at the lowest price possible and hold it for the fewest months possible. And you have that overlap every year, and like at every retailer, at least for Legos anyways. And so I have stuff, I'm looking at it over there, so I'm looking off camera. I only have like 40 of them, but like those things are going to make money, man. I think they were normally like 40, and I got them for 23. And like, with Lego, you want to stack like 3 things. Like you want it to be like ideally store exclusive, like a theme set like Star Wars, like the Death Star, like something super special, like that's like not replicable. Because then you have 3 levels of like collectors that are trying to get it with like rarity and demand on it.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Like even some like the Duplo stuff is like sought after. I'm like, why is the price so high on this thing? Like, why is? And it's just some parent wants to have their random Disney Duplo whatever crossover thing that they have, and they want to get it, and they'll pay a bunch of money for it. We had done a Jeff, myself, and a couple other people did a small Q4 leads group, and I had done some Legos, and I didn't really understand a lot of.
It's Lego, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, Lego. Thank you. But I hadn't really done a whole lot with Lego, and it was something where he was posting these leads, and I'm like, I'm just not comfortable with purchasing them. And he's like, well, here's the data, and he's like, this is going out, this is not coming back, this is not coming back.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, now that makes sense. I think all of them but one did extremely well. Like one of them took a little longer to sell. I still sold at a profit, but it just took longer to sell. It was a car one. But the rest of them they did so well, and I'm like, I can't believe that this did this good, because Keepa doesn't tell you it because it doesn't have the data of when it's discontinued. So now all of a sudden, if they know it's being discontinued or Lego's out of stock, they're not coming back with it. So it's now you have a leg up on everybody else. It's just amazing.
It's nuts, man, and that's a competitive advantage. It's like you're just sitting still, like your ability to hold and not expect any income up front, that's the competitive advantage. And not everyone's willing to do that. And that's how I came about the idea, was that like some guy on Instagram was doing that, and his revenue was like half of a quarter of mine, but his ROI was like 3x mine. So he was producing the same profit with like a third of the effort. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
The challenge, of course, is the capital, though, right? There's cost to capital, and you're not getting it 3.5% right now. It's, you know, you're paying 9.5%. 10% to get cap. I mean, you're still locked in at 3% because you got that loan, but most of us are, you know, paying 9-10% if we want to get capital.
Well, until he goes through that loan, and then that's it.
Yeah. Well, I have an American Express line of credit. I think it's 6%. It's 0.5% per month. And I think they gave me 136,000. So I'm using that to hold some stuff. I'm actually holding like $130,000 of stuff specifically that's discontinued.
Yeah.
But you're like, you have that physical risk of exposure where like fire and theft are a real concern now, you know?
Well, even beyond fire and theft, it's the Amazon listings. Like, it's just,
that too.
You know, because even they're zapping Lego listings now. Like, they're just, you know, there's just so many different things, especially like, again, the store exclusives used to be great, but now they're getting harder to even get the store exclusives up on the Amazon nowadays because, you know, the listing gets zapped or the listing goes bad and you can't get it fixed, or you know, it's still there, but it's search suppressed and stuff. So it's difficult, but
it's fun, man.
We're you know, we are very big into the Lego. We probably have, I probably have, my warehouse hates when they see the Lego. They're like, oh, not again.
It's just sit there. Yeah. It's not.
I mean, we probably have 3,000 square feet of Lego. We have essentially we have a retail store that's dedicated to Lego as well. Like we're hardcore into to Lego and the Lego holds, and you know.
What's funny is I want to expand that because one of the limitations, at least for Lego.com, is I think it's address locked. And so one of the things I want to test is virtual credit cards. And I bought a PO box. It's technically a private mailbox at UPS, but it functionally has like a commercial business address. And I think what ends up happening, because I did a test one, like I sent Lego to my personal house and I sent it to the private mailbox, and they both went through. And so, you know, some of this stuff, what the idea is, like, you have to go through all the paperwork and footwork of opening the boxes. But like, if you're shooting 20 ASINs per mailbox and the mailbox is dead and you can't get any more, okay, like it's worth your while because it's like the juice is worth the squeeze, I think it's the saying. But imagine doing that, like setting up 20 mailboxes and then you harvest all of that in. That's how you bypass the quantity cap. But you have to be willing to like do all that legwork, hold the capital, issue the credit cards and stuff. Like it's fun, man. Like you're just messing around. Like that's how this whole business is. Like you're doing stuff you're not supposed to do and you get away with it.
Yeah, no, it's cool too. Is there is so many ways you can do this, and the way you can make money. And you got some people that's all they do is they're flipping Lego or flipping long-term holds, and then you got the RA guys, the thrifters, it's just it's cool the different ways you can go at it, and that's why I like enjoy talking to different people, see how they do it and what they're doing and how they're making it work, because there is just so many different ways.
That's one of the things. There's a strong following with it because Tony's first thing is if his house catches on fire and burns down, it's not all of his stuff in his house; it's his 40 Lego over the corner.
Well, what's funny, that's what always fascinated me too, is that like everyone gets to the same end result of profit, but totally different ways, ways you had never even considered, and like that's kind of what you're just waiting for, is that like one idea to like the seed, the sparks, the fire, it's everything. Like that's what happened with Lego, and I started like fleshing it out, and it started making sense. Same with like web scraping. Like it took me, I think it took me like a month and a half to get up to proficiency. But like, I like to think of it as like I was a little boat that went out to the ocean, and like I didn't know I was ever gonna hit land. Like I'm lucky I hit land. But like what I'm trying to say is like my end result is like someone's not gonna like stumble upon it by accident. Like it was very deliberate to get to the end point. And even if you make it that far, you still have like. And it breaks my heart with like newer sellers because there's so many ASINs that are set up to fail. I call them like traps or setups. Like, they're selling at 100 today, but historically they're at $60, like 90% of the time. And like, I've done that so many times. Like, that's why I view everything as a risk reward situation. It's like, if I can survive the worst case scenario, I'll let the upside take care of itself, because like knowing my luck, because I do everything FBA, like I'm going to show up like 4 to 6 weeks after the fact. I need to know that there's price stability there, on top of there being velocity.
Yeah, a lot of times, I probably shouldn't disclose this, but lots of times when like I'm sourcing a sale, I buy the unprofitable products because if I buy the profitable products, they're not going to be profitable by the time we get there. But who's buying the 5% ROI thing? And especially if it's Q4 and it's moving, 20,000, 10,000 units a month or whatever, like everybody skips it because that's no good. Well, guess what? All those profitable products are going to be tanked by the time I get FBA. But hey, those things that weren't profitable are now everybody's out of stock, and I'm selling for 50, 80% ROI because I was the dumbass that bought the unprofitable products.
Yes, especially on like a month-long sale. If you're on week 3 on like Nike or any of these other popular places, and you find a slam dunk, do not buy that. It is not going to be a slam dunk very long. Now, Jeff, you have the advantage of getting your stuff in quicker. You're sending full truckloads, right?
Heck
So you're probably getting in 2 weeks faster than most people. So you might have the luxury to get in there a little bit late on those things. I think most people are taking close to a month by the time it goes through all the transfers and everything else to become available to be purchased. Is that what you're seeing, Tony? Is roughly from when you send it in to your prep center to actually being able to buy and that's not all of it. That's most of it is starting to become at a month.
I expect it to land anywhere from week 4 to 6. If it goes there faster, great, but I'm not expecting that. I would love it, but like I just think like a week to get to you, a week to go out, a week to deliver, a week to distribute within the fulfillment center, and then you're barely starting the process where it needs to sell through.
Are you using the West Coast Prep Center?
Montana, so West Coast.
Okay, that's the same thing I was using, and it started sending out to the West Coast for some reason all of a sudden, and I'm like, I don't know why all these things are going out there when there's all these other distribution fulfillment centers. So I was like, might have to look for something different because just everything was going to West Coast and taking longer. Now, hopefully, with all these extra fees and charges, they're eliminating all that. We'll kind of see as that plays out, but it's something to really keep aware of because it could take longer depending on what coast it's going to.
I had saw an Instagram reel recently that said like 80% of the U.S. population is located, I think, to the right of Texas, I guess the east. And I didn't realize that, like, from a competitive standpoint, like if all of your, like, say, I'm in California, right? If I'm ordering from Nike and it's shipping from like Indianapolis, it has to go like across like 7 states or whatever. But if it's just going next door and then it's distributing all right there, like what you're wanting to do is you want to be first to market before the price, like I call it snapping, like it reacts to like a sale price. If you can get in before it like reacts and does that movement, like, oh man, it's such a competitive advantage. That's why like merchant fulfilled people are in such a powerful position, because if you can show up on day 0 or day 1 of the sale, you have that small window of execution that you can get explosive profit before like the market reacts and all that supply comes in at the lower price.
Or day 29 and you send your stuff in, you're the last one in there. If it's a fast moving ASIN, you have an advantage there too. But that's a gamble. I mean, trying to send your stuff in and wait, it may not recover.
That's what my friend said. He said for any ASIN, you want to be either the first one in or the last one out. Because the last one out, there's no more supply, and the price is much higher. But the problem with that, again, is you don't know when that's going to happen or if. And that's a very dangerous proposition at scale in your business.
It starts to get better, and then there's another sale.
Yeah, and that can happen. You always have that exposure of like someone can come in lower than you. And I wanted to mention that here too. I've made money from returning things. Like I say, like I'm buying stuff year round at $100, and then on Black Friday it's for $50. And like Black Friday time, it doesn't work. I was like, well, I've been selling it $100 year round. I'm just going to buy it at a $50 back price and return it on my $100 receipt. Like I have $50 margin straight store credit. Like I'm okay. But that's only going to work on stuff you're like regularly buying. You can't really do it at scale either, because like you don't want to piss off the retailers and get them to ban you. But like it's kind of another like fun option you have available to you that I think people don't otherwise consider.
A lot of big retailers too, if it's within a certain time frame, it might be 30 days on a lot of them. If the price changes down lower than what you purchased it for, a lot of them, if you look at the terms of service, you can call them and they will adjust your receipt. Now you're flagging yourself if you have bought 1,000 of something and say I have 12 receipts of 100 each that I want to go and change. So if you're doing like Target or something, like expect to not be able to order any more off the Target after that. But you can save doing stuff like that.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I did that with Legos and Target during Black Friday. I think I bought it like I don't know, 2 weeks prior. Then Black Friday went even cheaper, like by another 10-20%. And I got price adjustments on them. And so it gave the idea, and this is just theory, I haven't tried it yet, but what if you bought and sent everything in with the anticipation that on Black Friday it's going to go on sale, then you adjust everything down, but you're already positioned in the market to execute. but that's all dependent on them honoring the price matching, and like, however many units you buy.
I would advise that that's a good idea.
It's good on paper, but I don't know if it works.
It's good on paper, yeah. It's especially like a store like Target that's not exactly super reseller friendly. You got to be.
I don't think they'd be that tolerant. They might do like one or two. But you wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. Depending on what scale you're doing it, right? If you bought 10 Lego sets, okay, that's one thing. If you bought 5,000 Lego sets and trying to return them all.
Because I have a friend that does I call it ghetto drop shipping. And it is, interest of full disclosure, like this is dangerous to do, but like we call it reviving zero offer listings. When something stocks out, our fail safe, so to speak, was like, say it's a Converse shoe that's stocked out, but we make sure that it's available in like 5 Kohl's. So we list it merchant fulfilled, and if it sells, then we go grab it. But like the benefit of those zero offer listings is that if you're the only one on the listing, you're setting the price, and you can get otherwise explosive margins that aren't otherwise available until other sellers catch on and start coming to the listing.
If you're ordering a shoe that's black, white, or gray, and in the normal size range, you're not ordering like a size 4 or something like that, and a size 13 necessarily, you're probably pretty safe in most cases with that kind of stuff on a popular name brand. Now, if you're getting some weird Keds or something that not a lot of people are necessarily buying, or some weird thing, then yeah, I mean you're going to be limited to how many sales you can get. Same thing, I had something where I bought size 13 extra wide women's shoes, and they sold, and I was amazed because I was like, I bought 6 of them, and I was like, that's gonna take 6 months. They sold in a few months. I got lucky, but nobody else was on the listing. Yeah. Brittany Garner probably bought them all, but there's only so many people that are that size, and then of that size that want that shoe and that brand, and it's just. Again, you can't do that anywhere but Amazon. But yeah, you can also get stuck with all that stuff. And you're going to try to eBay a size 13 extra wide. It's just not going to sell.
But those long tails are nice to have. I call them long tail when it takes a long time to sell.
Yep.
But they're nice to have in your business. But I don't know that you can necessarily have it be your baseline, like your primary engine of income. But it's nice to have them for these grand slams and stuff. And I'm reminded of my friend that told me that high price shoes have less competition because people are scared of them. But that's a competitive advantage because it keeps people away. I was like, man, I didn't really think about that. And the quality of buyers should be different. Obviously, there's still fraud going on and stuff.
Yeah,
Air Force One and stuff.
Well, you can still have somebody who can afford to put it on their card and then cancel it right away because they say that they got the wrong thing, and then send you back some Skechers in a box that's all grass stained. Yeah. But yeah, there's certainly a risk to it. And then in that case, the box better be mint. And then if you start getting returns and the box is messed up, now you end up in what do you do with these really nice shoes in this collector item box? Or someone steals the box because they want to have it on their shelf or whatever it is, and it gives you something else. Same thing with the Lego. People taking the figurines out of them and then returning the rest of the pieces in it. There's risk to everything. But again, the alternative is you don't do it. You don't make money. You don't it's. I don't want to just buy, $3, packs of flour and sell that as a grocery thing and have to do 20,000 of them. I want to buy some of the more expensive stuff and sell 50 or 100 and make that same money. And again, you're talking about building moats. So if you can afford to buy that stuff or buy it out and be okay with selling that and okay with dealing with the returns and understanding how to do the restocking, understand how to do safety claims or all the A to Z stuff. If you know how to work that whole process with it, you're insulated a little bit, and you can make a lot of money because there's just, like you said, there's not going to be as many people ordering from there. They just can't. They don't have the capital. It's impossible for them.
That kind of reminds me of why I got into shoes as a category, was my pivot from toys. Toys, I had a lot of delicate stuff like Funko Pops and stuff, or Barbies with I forget what they call them, the plastic encasing. Basically, it's delicate and it can get damaged in transit. Whereas shoes, the shoes themselves are functionally indestructible. Obviously, the box cannot survive, but I liked that, and it was uniform from a packing standpoint when I was still prepping. I liked that too. But the problem was that you have a higher return rate. I think I averaged around 13%. But even with that higher return rate, you can still come out ahead. I think Kohl's as a retailer, when I checked my numbers last year, just gross profit, before the business expenses and stuff, I think I did 55,000 just off Kohl's alone. And I'm willing to do that. Yes, I know I'm going to get returns, but I'm going to, if I'm going to get $55,000, I'm willing to deal with that problem. And that's just one of my sources,
Yeah.
Like it's a good problem to have.
But that's the key with knowing your numbers and not throwing everything on a high interest rate credit card and waiting. And that's where people get killed, is because they don't take into account those interest fees, and they get crushed by them. And all of a sudden they think they're making 13, 15, 18%, and they're not. They're losing money because they don't understand how that interest rate works and how it compounds. And it's just, you'll never get out of it if you start holding on to stuff too long and just, hoping that it sells.
I was gonna say, yeah, the return, you got to know the return cost too. Like the shoes, you can't take, 30% ROI and, $7 profits for shoes. Like you're not going to make money.
You'll die.
So, and that's where people don't always adjust. I see the question asked in all these Discords and, what's your minimum, what are your ROI requirements? Well, it varies by category, and it varies how easy it's to prep. It varies how big it is. There's so many other variables to make a decision. And from shoes perspective, you need to be, definitely north of $10, if not $15, $20 profit, because your profit's going to be destroyed with, as you said, a 13% return rate. And if you're not picky with your prep, or you buy, women's dress shoes, your return rate's going to be over 20%. And, you need to prepare for that, let alone, because it's not just a return, but then it's, Amazon charges you to process that return.
Oh yeah.
Then they charge you, God, I think, what is it? It's like $3 now to get a shoe. A removal order on a shoe is by like $3.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
It used to be 25 cents, right? Back in the day.
Yeah, I remember the 25 cents, man. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah. Now, you get a shoe back, it's $3. So and the return fees, I forget what the return fee is. And they've added, I think, another return fee.
And that's if it's returned once. Tony did this great chart on what the true cost of returns are. And,
I wanted to mention that. Yeah.
No, that's go ahead. Yeah. I'm gonna butcher it, so you go ahead and tell it.
That was my other aha moment, was the true return cost of every return. Is because I was naive, thinking that if you made $10 and it returned, you just go back to zero because you refund the profit. Yeah. But the way it works in the books, or on the back end, when I'm looking at the inventory labs transaction, they keep the fulfillment fee because they did technically ship the item. Yeah. They refund the referral fee because they lost the transaction. And I was like, okay, that's fair. But I think there's a refund admin fee and another fee I don't remember the name of, but there's 3. But when I ended up adding them all together, it ends up being $14.
Yeah.
$14, $15. But that's not including the cost it charged to ship it to FBA. So that's probably another $2. So you're looking at $16. What I was doing, I was recalling everything to me, which was $2. And then I eat $2 back to get, to ship it. And I have to, all this time there's finances involved on the time you're carrying it. That's where I was like, crap, I was sourcing shoes at $5 profit, 20% ROI. Yep, and I was like, what function, say it was $15 loss every return. That meant every one return canceled out the profit of 3 sales. Yeah. And that was my aha moment. It's I cannot survive unless I do
and that's if they can be resold. If they can't be resold, now you've lost even more. So
you lost the entire thing.
And you get into those high dollar items. If you get one that's returned that you can't quite get the restocking, any of the fees back on, and if you're doing FBA, it hurts you. And it's one where why did I buy these things and spend $10,000 on this stuff when I net zero?
And so now for me, at a minimum, I won't even consider shoes unless I call it 12.30 because I like to think of it as a time, but $12 raw profit and 30% ROI. And I try and think of it the raw profit because the goal or the ideal would be one sale would cancel out one refund in terms of profit is what I want to do. Because you don't want to be in a position where you need 3 sales to cancel out one return. And then you'll be hurting. And that was my big aha
especially on
moment,
shoes where you're going to get returns. It's a different thing if you've got a fast moving item that has under 2% return rate, but that's not, you're not finding shoes with that.
And that was the other thing. That was my other counterbalance, was that I only want to execute on the shoe purchases when I have that 8 to 12% cash back. Because obviously you don't want to factor into your margins, but in my mind, it exists. My understanding, I'm not a tax person, is it functions as cash back, and therefore it's not taxable, it's not income. But for me, it's that's your final line of defense. If everything goes haywire, you have that final buffer before you bleed. And if you're buying right and manufacturing all your margin, catastrophic stuff has happened before you even take a loss. You have to chew through 40% ROI on a listing before you even approach a loss if you're doing it right. When I crunched my numbers on that Kohl's, with 55,000, I think I made an income, and then of the losses, it was $1,500. I try to bring it up to illustrate the point. I even as I don't know that I'm experienced, but even as long as I've been doing it, it's more so to illustrate the point. Not everything you're gonna buy is gonna work, because there's stuff you just need to walk away from. And for me, I'm of the mindset, like, I'd rather walk away and lose the time and get the money back. Like, yeah, it sucks, but like, I get to go up to bat again. Like, I don't care. But like, that's how tight I try and run everything. Like, that's so lopsided, I think. Like, I hope I'm doing a good, I don't know if those are good numbers, but I hope that's okay in terms of a ratio, you know?
I mean, and that's the same thing with holding on to product, the hope that it comes back and rebounds versus just cutting your losses and getting rid of it, even if that's at a loss, because that money can then be used. Again, this is if you don't have unlimited capital, that money then can be used to source something better and more profitable and turn that back over and get that profit back. Otherwise, you just hold on to it and you may still lose, and then plus get hit with a bunch of fees and everything else with it. So rather than holding on to something too long, just sell through it, cut your losses, source something better, because if it tanked that bad, then you weren't sourcing good enough. You need to do better and make money on the next one. Or you can hold it for a really long time and hope that it recovers, which it may never. And then now you had zero opportunity to make money with that money.
That's restricted, or it went zap, or it turned into, I don't know, a snorkel system instead of a shoe.
The listing photo changes,
yeah. So there's always risk besides just the fees and the capital of holding stuff that you got to be careful with, especially when you're holding at FBA.
Oh yeah, it's nuts, man. It's funny, like when you're learning, it's overwhelming, but once it becomes second nature, it's fun because you're just like arbitraging stuff. You're like, I'm taking this unprofitable thing in this market, I'm putting it over here in this profitable market, and you're just doing that like at scale, and it's so much fun. And I that's kind of one of the reasons I like shoes, is because in terms of a cashback engine, like, it's phenomenal. The cashback's so elevated, and like, I'll have some ASINs that have like a 30% return rate, but I'm still netting 40% ROI. Obviously, it's a headache to do that, but like, at the end of the day, like, if I'm coming out ahead, I'm like, I'm willing to do that. And that's not happening at scale. And like little kid shoes, I started gravitating towards those. Yes, they have a higher return rate, but I think of it as economies of scale. My cost per unit to ship it is like a third of what it would cost to ship an adult shoe.
I don't know if they have higher return rates. I feel like the parents are like, it's fine. You're going to make it work, kid. I'm not returning this.
They'll buy 3 of different sizes and see which one fits.
Yes. I do hate that. Anytime you see an order and it's got the 3 different sizes, I'm like, come on. I hope they have 3 kids.
But what I like about the shoes is that generally when they put them on a child's foot, like an infant, like, they're not walking around in them. So in terms of like them having wear when they get returned, like, they look like they're still new. And like, I love that. Whereas the adult shoes, like, you'll get like wear on them and like the little crinkle, like once the crinkles on that, like, you can't like.
Some of the marks and stuff you can get off with the shoe wipes, but the crinkles, I don't know any way to get. I've tried steaming them. I've tried doing everything.
Oh no,
it's not that they even wear them very long. You can wear them once and they'll get that if you're stepping on them good and moving around with it. It depends what the shoe's made of.
Yeah, but it's gnarly, man. I'm writing notes, like, as we're talking, and I wrote down my repricer wars. I don't know if I told you that story.
No.
About like setting your minimums. At the time I was buying Moose products. There was a wholesale account. Shopkins was the toy. I was buying them wholesale at the time. I had a case pack of 30, and I had been selling them for like a year at that point. But someone came on and like they would always undercut me by like a penny or something trivial, or it got to the point where I was like, I'm bitter. Like, I don't like you. Like, let's see how low you're willing to go. And I think the selling price was like 80 at the time. I think the cost was 60. I think it was selling at 100, something like that. And I ended up dropping them down. And what I did was you can put quantity limits on your purchase in your ASIN so you don't get stocked out. So I put it to 1. And then I waited till like 2 a.m. And I dropped that guy down all the way to $40. And I stocked him out. I caught all his inventory because I had the wholesale invoices to back it. And I felt comfortable and familiar enough to identify it like as authentic, and I had the paperwork to back me. This must have been like 2016 when inauthentic complaints weren't as aggressive as they are today. But I bought it all at 40 when my unit cost was 60, and then I relisted it at 120. Like some people aren't paying attention, man, and you could do some like
most start paying attention. They put it on autopilot, especially if they're going off of an algorithm-based repricer, not setting a minimum, and they're just saying, put it a penny under buy box or whatever they go to put it to, which is just silly because you can win sales and win the buy box being a higher price. The whole penny down thing is just ridiculous.
I made like $3,000 off that. That was great.
It's a good move. I've done it as well, and you find people though. As soon as the listing went search suppressed, and so somebody just keeps lowering the price. I'm like, well, it's search suppressed not because of the price. It's search suppressed because of another reason. But they keep lowering the price and lowering the price. Next, you notice you said it's lower than my buy cost. I'm like, okay, well, here's this. here's an alternate listing, or here's a multi-pack, whatever. So I'm going to buy it from this search suppressed listing. I'll take your inventory and I'll throw it on another listing, or I'll fix this listing. Like there's, like it's, lowering the price. And again, it's hard. Believe me, I get it from mine, because it's a night for us to manage our repricing. Like, but sometimes that's what I try to make sure I tell our repricing team. Like, you can't just, lowering price isn't going to get you a sale per se. Like, why is it not selling? Like, and let's understand it a little more than just saying, okay, let's, lower the price. No, lower price doesn't necessarily mean sale. If there's, if it's being suppressed, searched on Amazon, like, the only way it can be found is from Google, and, if not probably not selling very much. Nobody's selling it. So us price warring down to, $5 below our cost isn't going to help.
I've sent everything I send in. I jack the price up on it while it's in transit. I don't ever send it in at what the current buy box is. And there's times where I've sold like something like shoes $30 over what the buy box was, and I'm not selling 100 of them at that, but you sell a few of them and it's great. Now, if you have 100,000 or whatever of the product, having the buy box and being a lower price is probably going to be advantageous. But otherwise, you can sell plenty of products if you don't have a crazy inventory with a higher price. It's absolutely possible. There's people that build their whole business off of it.
Yeah, I think it's gotten even easier. Like, through the years, as Amazon's, back in the 2015, I don't think they had the regional buy box, right? Like, it's all the same buy box, and it was, their buy box algorithm was a little more simple. Lowest price usually won. But now in 2024, you got the regional buy boxes, and you have the so that there might be 20 people on it, but how many are near the customer? You can be priced higher and still get the sales, and you can still get you can still get 20% of the buy box if you have the right metrics and other parts of what that buy box algorithm is, being 10% higher than lowest FBA. So
and that works at merchant fulfilled too. I've had people that, again, I'm selling it normal, so they're buying an item from me for $15. And then they go and overnight it or next day. And at that point, they could have gotten it cheaper just getting it from Amazon's Prime thing and ordering it. But I'm like, why? And it's because I'm closer, or the logistics in Amazon don't allow it to get to it costs them more money to get it to them. And plus, I tell everybody this, the same thing with like Amazon selling on the listing. Amazon, if they're the lowest price on there, they make whatever amount of money or no money on that product. They're just helping the customer out or whatever, but they're going to make say a couple bucks off of it. If they sell to me, that's above Amazon's pricing, they make percentages. They make more money off the percentages that they get in my sale than they do off of their thing. So they're going to try to make money in the aggregate there, and they're going to say, let's give a certain percentage to other people and share this so that we can make our money back and be profitable and hit our margins, even selling it at a lower price. So they are going to give you the sale at a higher price. Now, if you want to have 1,000 sales of it, you need to be a little bit below, Amazon's cost on it. Same thing with FBM. If you want to have a lot of sales, you need to be $1 or whatever below, the FBA in most cases, but you can certainly sell it at a higher price.
I just started selling an appliance. I think Amazon's at $70 and mine are selling through at $100. Yeah. And I sent some in to test, because what I do is when I send inventory in, if it's selling at 50, I'll send it in at 80, because I'm always worried that it might sell through. And when I land, the market's at 70, I don't want it to arrive at 50. And so they were selling at 100, and I did it that's just my normal protocol. But I sent in a second wave, and the same thing happened. And so now I'm I'm going to go in deep, because that listing does, I think, 2,000 units a month. And I'm I can live off this thing, if I can get the volume on it.
Well, it's a big bulky item, so they're putting that on an airplane. They're shipping it, and that costs money. It costs fuel. It's easier for them to give it to you or wherever your distribution center has it, and then to sell it that way than to ship it out themselves for wherever their stuff's at. Now, they're probably going to correct that at some point and move some of their stuff over to wherever they have a disadvantage. But ride it as long as you can.
Well, that's kind of one of the things I like about Amazon, because usually whenever you start, I think of it. Competitive advantage standpoint, whenever you're starting a new ASIN, you're at zero, right? But once you build that buffer, say you have $500 of profitable history on that ASIN, now you have a buffer, you can get banged up a little bit, because you have 500 to chew through. So for me, in my instance, I'm going to hit this appliance as hard as I can, because now I have say $2,000 of profit behind it. If I have to walk away from it, liquidate it at break even, I'm fine. I got to play. I got $2,000 to play, you know, because
Yeah.
everything starts like as an educated guess. Then you get your product in there. Then you come out with the hard data, and that's where you get like real dangerous because you can make an even more informed decision on your replenishment, assuming you still have access to the item. And that's why like the coupons and the manufacturing margin is so critical, because if you're doing it right, you're looking at all the items people aren't sourcing because they're not on sale. And so you're looking here while everyone's looking there. And like if you do it right at scale, like everything's replenishable on OA.
And I think that's the overwhelming, basis around your entire, strategy with selling is data. And if the data is not telling you something, you're not buying it because there's something else that does have data to it that you don't have to have that risk on. And you might flag something that makes sense and go back to it later and see if it does come up with better data or any data at all. But you don't have to buy it because you're now pulling so much information from all these different, avenues that you're able to process that that many more ASINs and then go back to the other stuff that just doesn't seem like it's going to work right now.
That's one of my buying critiques, because I have like 30 points that I go through when I evaluate purchasing decisions. But one of them is like I don't buy anything that's like under 100 days, because like the listing hasn't figured out its footing or its price equilibrium and stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to trailblaze. I don't want to be the guy that figures it out. Could it be profitable? Sure, but it could go the other way too. And like I'm not about that life, because whoever has the most information at the end of the day is going to make the best informed decision. And that's the position you want to be in, because like I think it was a general term. It's like you don't make money when you sell, you make the money when you buy. Like you want the deck stacked in your favor. We're not like risk takers, we're risk mitigators. We only want to come out of our shell when it's safe, like, and we're likely to win. And I need to come up with a better example. But I always think of it like if I go into a boxing match, like I want to be fighting someone that's like way smaller than me. Like that's how I want it to be stacked. Like I want to know I'm going to win when I go out, because I'm not like putting money on the line. It's not risky to me when you know you have all of this supporting you on the back end. That's why I like the cashback buffer,
Yeah, there's that whole thing with Tim Ferriss and the 5-hour work week, where he talks about winning I can't remember what sport it was, but some sort of martial arts sport where he went to whatever country they were from and just he was bigger. He did all the water weight stuff, was smaller when he got in, and then bulked back up real quick right before everything. And he just grabbed the people and threw them out of the ring and got all the points for it and ended up winning the championships.
That's all Amazon
is. Like a national sport, because he stacked the deck in his favor and knew the rules of the game and then made it work for him. And it's no different than anything you do with any business is, you have to stack the deck, because there's so many people that are going to know these little tricks and ins and outs better than you do. So whatever you can do, don't give up that 5% extra on the gift card, and don't give up the extra cashback button that you can hit, because it's going to come back and haunt you.
It's not, man. What's the saying? The sum of its parts are greater than its whole, or something like that.
Yeah.
Because all of it's so insignificant, but when it's all stacked together, like it makes a difference. Because because sometimes like say your threshold is like 20%. Like if you're right on the fence, like I could not buy it or buy it, but if I get an extra like 7% cash back or on the gift card, like that makes a difference between buying something and not buying something. And like that's all it could take.
And if somebody else didn't find that, then now you're buying something that was a pass from somebody else. That now, again, like Jeff was saying, is it's not a slam dunk one. You have to fight to make that work, and a lot of other people are going to scan right by it because it just doesn't work.
That's the other thing I like to say too. Like you're competing against people that are using some or all of these methods that are available to them. You're at a literal disadvantage if you're not making use of the entire toolkits that are available to you, and that comes in the form of like manufacturing margin, coupons, tax exempt, cashback, credit cards, all of that, man. Like stocking stuff out, being first to market, like it all makes a huge difference. And like the thing with Amazon, I think people fail to realize is that there's literally like there's infinite possibilities, because like no one has enough money to take advantage of all the opportunities that are out there. So there's going to be a bunch of like little ecosystems you can thrive in. And like, it's great. Like it's crazy.
So we have a lot of people that watch this that are new to Amazon, or maybe not in Amazon space yet. They don't have this experience with looking at all the data. They don't necessarily have the experience with running coding and scraping websites and all those kind of things. What would you tell somebody if they were starting today? They downloaded the app, they got in, they did their screening, they're now able to sell. What would you advise this person to do to have the most success over the next 6 months?
For me, like if I could do it over again, for me, like the beginning's proof of concept, right? And I bring that up more so to mention like your goal is not to like make a profit. Obviously you want to make profit, but I mean it more so in the sense like you need to go through the process to see what it looks like creating a shipment, what it looks like to sell. because until you get your first sale, like you're not going to believe that it's real. And that was my aha moment of something sold and like, oh crap, like this is real. This really works. Like you just need to get used to that flow, because the amount of overwhelm you're going to get is going to be like a lot in the beginning, and you need to get past that. So like, don't compare your month 1 to your month 10.
Yeah.
Is like the huge thing. Because once you get that kind of like on autopilot where it's on second nature, like you'll be fine. Because for a lot of people, well, I'm making an assumption here. I think Amazon for a lot of people was probably their first time ever running the business. And like, you're wearing a lot of hats. You're doing accounting, you're doing buying, you're doing shipping, you're doing sourcing and everything. Like that's a lot of different like levels of skill sets that you need to bring up all at the same time. And like, for me, like you just like, I was scanning so much stuff. Like I always like to use that example, like scan 100 things, like 10 might be viable. You might buy like 4 or 5 of them. Like it really is a volume game. And I think of it more so in the sense, like the faster you get through the items, the faster you're going to find the one that works. And so like, that's why I think scanning stuff at your house, like you need to learn like 1,000 sales rank in one category is good here, but like terrible in another one.
Yeah.
Like 2 million in books is like really bad, but I don't know where 2 million is good in any category. That's probably a bad example.
Yeah, I think you did it backwards. Like,
Yeah.
you know, 1 million in books isn't horrible, but 1 million in most other categories,
Yeah,
you're not
there it
touching
is.
it.
Yeah, because there's I can't remember what the percentages of how many millions of books there are, but that's why Amazon started with books, is because there's just so many SKUs, with it.
Like 250K in books is flying, but 250 in video games, you're moving one every 6 months probably.
I don't know how it is nowadays, but when I had started, books was a good entry point, more so because there's a lot of volume and people kind of like discarded them if you're going to thrift stores and stuff.
Yeah.
But the point was that you could get them for like $1 or something like trivial, like where if it messes up, it's not going to cripple you financially. What I'm concerned about now today is how that would look on the paperwork side in terms of like inauthentic complaints and proof of purchase. That might not hold up as well, but like that was a good entry point otherwise in the past.
The long tails, and those get a little harder nowadays with storage fees and IPIs. They've seemed to have pushed a little away from the IPI stuff, but it's still, you still need to maintain, I forget what is it 350 now or something like that.
Oh yeah. Before they start getting mad at you. One of the big things, if you're going to do OA, which is online arbitrage or retail arbitrage, like physically doing stuff like that, I would highly recommend figuring out getting tax exempt, because that can add anywhere from extra like 5 to 10% margin you wouldn't otherwise have. And because I like to think of it like, if a business is operating in like 10%, say, net margin, and you add an extra 10% sales tax savings, like you literally can potentially double your bottom line. And like with that one action alone, like that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I think there's 6 states in the United States that don't have sales tax, something like that. So like the other 46 states are at a disadvantage. So like you want to position yourself to be sales tax exempt. I know Walmart and the Best Buy offer sales tax exemption, like signing up through their portal and stuff. So those things are considered. Same thing with the gift card. Like if you add an extra 5% to your bottom line, if you're making 5% net and you add 5% more with a gift card, like you doubled your bottom line. Same thing with the credit card. Like I started with a 1% cash back, and I got offered 2% cash back. And I was like, oh, that's stupid. But then I was like, wait a second, this is literally 100% increase, 1 to 2. Like that's crazy. Like, why would I not take this? And now I'm excited about 2% cash back. But like you can do nutty stuff, man. Like I was thinking about like farming cash back. Like even if you break even, but if you're getting all the cash back and it's like 20%, like some businesses don't even make 20%,
If you're spending enough, it makes sense. There was a story that I shared with Jeff the other day. It was this guy bought this like $65 million building on a credit card. Mm-hmm. And they were like, you can't buy the building on a credit card. And he's like, well, call them and they'll give you the authorization. It was like this royal gold, whatever. So they called him, they gave him the authorization, and he bought it. And he got 1%, back on, the sale of the thing. And then it's the day that he got the invoice, he paid it, and the early pay earned him 1%. So he ended up getting like $1.5 million back just because he used a credit card and then paid it with money that he already had anyway. But because he used it that way, he ended up making all this money by using a credit card to buy a multi-million-dollar building, which is amazing.
I'm doing something as similar, but I found a category in office supply that registers as shipping, and my credit card gives me 4x points on shipping. And the ASIN itself makes like 10-15%, and it sells like anywhere from, like, depending on the ASIN, like 1 to 5,000 units a month. And so I'm just ripping hotel points. I think I'm at 1 million Marriott points for the year. Like for me, like I don't care that it like makes any money. Like it's the engine that like is
Gets you though.
to get the hotel points. And I like the hotel points because my family or up to 4 people can benefit from that one action,
That's
and so like
amazing.
you can do stuff like that. And it
Cool.
makes money. And I learned that you can like time it so it's discontinued and then it'll make 30-40%. And I found out about this like entirely by accident and trial and error.
And this is
But that
all
was
in the
just-
last year and a half, probably, I'd imagine.
Yeah. And that was just loading up I think office supply is a category. And I was literally looking at the pictures and be like, does that look like something I can have access to? And like I literally bought it from the seller because I didn't know how to prep it. And I wanted to see how they prepped it so I could replicate it. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to try it, and just baby stepped it until it evolved into what it is today.
I think you got to be careful with using your own Prime account doing that, because if you use your Prime account that's hooked to your storefront and you buy somebody else's same product and then you try to it's like flagging you for doing that. So you got to be careful with that, or have your neighbor buy it or something.
For that, you're absolutely right. For that, I didn't send it in. It was more to buy intel, and like I consider it a cost of doing business. But I could see how it get misconstrued if I started sending like 100 units. I'm like, hey, remember that one unit you bought? Like, going down.
Yeah, I think there's something in the terms of service. It's been a while since I read that part of it.
Yes.
That you're not allowed to do that.
Not for resale. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, anyway, here, I think we got a good episode going here, and hopefully a lot of people, taking some notes or re-listen to it, because a lot of fantastic information was given. Where can people find you, Tony?
So I'm under the username Startup FBA. I'm most active on Instagram. I have a Twitter account and a YouTube channel. But if you guys have any questions, like feel free to reach out. I love this stuff, man. I've been doing it 10 years. And when people are willing to listen, it's great because it doesn't go over well at parties. It's a real treat to be able to talk about it like on purpose.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend with us here and kind of give us all this information. For those listening, we appreciate you giving up your time to take a listen to us as well.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you guys.